Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about two soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is Joe DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from, without getting too bogged down in music theory. Up first this week for our two games is 2012's Mass Effect 3, the conclusion to the greatest trilogy of space opera media that the video game industry has ever seen, even if that conclusion came with some controversy.
Following that is a whimsical adventure to destroy the scourge of capitalism, and also wear some neat hats and kick everything in sight. 2019's Pikuniku.
Yes, games where you are fighting the insurmountable force, be they mechanical starships called Reapers, or just that whole thing called capitalism. Otherwise, wow, I'm not sure these two games are alike in the slightest.
By design, it's tradition that I pick a completely unfitting game to go next to, because I did that with Mass Effect 1, that was Rakuen. When you did Mass Effect 2, I brought Donkey Kong Country. And so now here we are with Mass Effect 3 and Pikuniku.
Well, it should be quite the time I've been looking forward to this week in game releases, that's for sure. But Joe, how are you doing? What are you playing?
Been playing new Pokemon Snap. It's good.
Yeah, how about that?
I have some problems with it. Like, I hate Illumina Pokemon stages. I think they're all awful. But other than that, like, it's really good. I'm having a great time with it.
Yeah, I beat new Pokemon Snap.
I think I'm very close to finishing.
I think you are, based on what you've shared with me. Yeah, you're real close. But yeah, it took me just over 9 hours, over 2 days, kind of just knocked that out. Had a great time. I really enjoyed that for sure. Then I played some more Super Mario 3D World, trying to knock that off the backlog list, so to speak. The Switch version, that is. I just hit World Castle, World 7.
Other than that, I continued I have the Somnium Files just a little bit, but then Pokemon came out, and I'm trying desperately to roll credits on Pokemon before, at time of recording, Resident Evil 8 Village is not out yet, but it will be by the time this episode comes out, and I want to have rolled credits on Snap before that game shows up.
I think you can do that. You're definitely not far away. In the meantime, let's talk about some composer follow-up news. We've talked about so many different composers on this show, and they're still working on things in the video game industry. Sometimes video game industry headlines bring up that work of composers. So let's see what's going on in the industry. Only a couple headlines this week. Let's talk about the Mass Effect bonus content download. Electronic Arts, EA, they put up a website where you can go and get the soundtracks of the Mass Effect trilogy for free. It's this free 1.7 gigabyte download. Includes these three soundtracks for Mass Effect 2, and Mass Effect 3. Mass Effect 3 we'll get to, along with some art books, some comic books, a digital lithograph. It was essentially like the digital content that was included in like the digital deluxe versions of Mass Effect 2 and 3. Well, it's interesting because these soundtracks include a new track. It's called Resynthesis, and it's composed by Sam Hulick. We covered him on our Mass Effect 2 episode. This track was previously released as Ghost Ship from his Bandcamp album, B-Sides from Another Galaxy. Well, now it's been repurposed specifically for the Legendary Edition of Mass Effect. My best guess after listening to it, I think it's probably going to be menu music for when you select which game you want to play in the trilogy, but that's just my best guess. It is available through May 31st or whenever download capacity is reached. Whatever that means, EA.
Yeah, I'm not 100% certain what the hell that means, but alright, cool. This is really cool. I love it when studios are just like, yeah, here's a soundtrack. Take it. I prefer it more when I can buy them, because then I know at least some of that money probably goes to the composers, though in terms of AAA games, probably not a ton. But yeah, this is really cool. The last time I remember a big AAA studio doing this was Valve with Portal 2.
Yeah.
It was a while ago. Meanwhile, we have talked about Norihiko Hibino. We talked about him for his work in Yakuza 2, but he's most well known for doing work in like Metal Gear Solid and stuff like that. But he also has an entire series, if you'll remember, of albums that are meant to be remixes of video game songs that are specifically tuned to help you go to sleep, essentially. Like the release before this was Undertale, which was a big deal, but there's a new one that is coming out on May 19th. It is called Stardew Valley, Prescription for Sleep, partnering with Eric Concerned Ape Barone, who is the lead developer on Stardew Valley. There are a couple of preview tracks on the Bandcamp page for Scarlet Moon Records. You can go check that out now. But yeah, this seems like a great fit. This is a perfect fit.
Yeah, absolutely. You like nice, relaxing, slow jazz that helps you sleep? I mean, who better than, Eric Barone, Concerned Ape? Yeah, you're right. Developer and composer. Everything. One-man effort on that game. That's really cool to see. Two composers that we've talked about before just kind of teaming up for this.
Yeah, I actually kind of forgot Prescription for Sleep was a thing until I saw this going around on Twitter, and I need to go back through and check those albums out again.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to talking about the first of our two games this week, and this is Mass Effect 3. It is finally our time to conclude our conversations on the Mass Effect trilogy. See, in episode 4 of Original Soundchat, we covered Mass Effect with Jack Wall as the composer there. And then in episode 58, we covered Mass Effect 2 with Sam Hulick. So now we get to 3. Mass Effect 3 released on March 6th, 2012 in North America for Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and PC. It released on March 8th and 9th in Australia and Europe, respectively. You could also get a Wii U version of the game as Mass Effect 3 Special Edition, released on November 18th, 2012. It was a Wii U launch title in North America.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I got it, and I didn't really play it that much. It came out on November 30th in the PAL regions. Mass Effect 3 is, of course, also part of Mass Effect Trilogy, which released in November 2012, combining the 3 games of the trilogy into one pack on Xbox 360, PS3, and PC. Now, Mass Effect Legendary Edition is an updated remaster of the trilogy. It launches this Friday, May 14th, 2021, on PS4 and Xbox One. It's also playable on PS5 and Xbox Series X and S, as well as PC. It's going to be interesting to see, get to play that, and obviously Mass Effect, the original game, is going to be the most polish and shine on it to kind of bring it up to 2 and 3 standards, but I am so excited. For a long time, that was like one of my dream game releases. Finally happening. So cool.
I can't believe it's not come to Switch, though. I don't understand.
Yeah, I think in time it may, but they're focusing on these install bases first, I think. Mass Effect 3 is developed by BioWare and published by Electronic Arts. It is a third-person action role-playing game, with gameplay heavily relying on third-person shooter mechanics. So we've kind of talked about this in the past Mass Effect games, what is generally involved here. But in this one, of course, you can build your Commander Shepard from scratch, or you can import your save file from Mass Effect 2, and all of your choices that you've made will carry over. Then you can choose one of 6 classes that have advantages in different combat abilities. In this game in particular, you build relationships with alien allies to bring the galaxy together against an impending threat. This is also the series' first multiplayer mode. Mass Effect 3 added a multiplayer mode, and it actually factors into the game's ultimate conclusion, for better or for worse. So the plot of Mass Effect 3, Commander Shepard has returned to Earth to warn anyone who will listen about the impending threat of Reapers, a highly advanced machine race of synthetic organic starships. There's just one problem with Shepard not being taken too seriously. The Reapers are already here. So after a narrow escape, Shepard needs to find a way to stop the Reapers' planned galactic takeover and purging of organic life. Once Shepard's crew is assembled, the first hint of such a means to stop the Reapers exists on Mars, where Shepard discovers that his former benefactor, the Elusive Man, wants to find a way to control the Reaper threat instead of eliminate it. Can Shepard make enough alliances across the galaxy to push the Reapers back? And will Shepard even choose to destroy the Reapers? Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Mass Effect 3?
I played it years ago. I don't even remember how long ago. I think it would have been in like 2015 on Mass Effect Trilogy. That's obviously where I picked that up. And I remember enjoying it, but also I saw the unpatched version of the ending because I didn't have internet connection when I played it on my PS3. Ooh, boy. But overall, like, I think the general gameplay of the game, I remember enjoying quite a bit. And I don't know, I don't remember a huge amount about, like, the story. I just remember that Tally's best girl.
She is really good. I don't know if I'd say for personal taste she's the best girl, but she's very good. Mass Effect 3 is not my favorite in the series, but it's still very good. I think personally the ending drama is way too entirely overblown, but we'll get to that conversation in a bit because it's definitely one of the big points of note when you look back on this game and its history. Yeah, I played it at launch. I loved it. I had a great time with it, and I think it concludes a trilogy nicely. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion. We'll have to see what you guys think in the comments and on social media and all that stuff. So, pre-production on Mass Effect 3 began before Mass Effect 2 was even released. So, considering Mass Effect 2 released in January 2010, I think it was January 26th, if I remember correctly. So then probably in 2009, development work started on Mass Effect 3. But because the game was targeting the end of the console lifecycle at the time, there wasn't really too much concern about pushing technology or graphics forward. It was still on the same Unreal Engine, so you're not getting huge jumps in how the game looks, so focus went towards optimizing gameplay and storytelling. This meant adding more character customization and RPG elements because some people thought, I think rightfully so, they kind of went away from that in 2. BioWare also decided to make the game more newcomer friendly, and they also wanted to make battles more dynamic with a bunch of different enemy types and different types of environments, things like that. Mass Effect 3 has 40,000 lines of dialogue, which you compare that to Mass Effect's 20,000 and Mass Effect 2's 25,000. Because the cast was so extensive, actors worked remotely. Found that interesting because, hey, I'm sure a lot of video game studios have had to have their voice actors work remotely in these pandemic times. And at the time, it was an approach that wasn't really used that often, so BioWare had to adapt. With the actors being remote, combined with the sheer volume of dialogue, it made it difficult for BioWare to consistently capture the proper intonation and volume of each line. So to reduce these kinds of errors, they apparently developed their own technology, such as the Intensity Volume Matrix, which listed out each line and the appropriate tone associated with it. And what a cast it is. It's really incredible not only how many characters they got to bring back, but the new characters they introduced as well. Though some characters, like Diana Allers as Jessica Chobot coming into play this role of the reporter on the ship. Don't know if we needed some characters like that, but I mean, it's an incredible cast, even by today's standards.
I forgot there was a reporter on the Normandy until literally you just said it.
Yeah, there are certainly some things to remember about Mass Effect 3. Maybe it's due for a replay in the Legendary Edition.
I've been considering replaying the trilogy for years. Eventually I will.
Well, at least when you do replay the trilogy, you will not have to deal with the multiplayer mode in Mass Effect 3. Now, some players remember it fondly. I didn't care for it much, but some players enjoyed ME3's multiplayer. And yeah, it was a big decision to include it at the time for sure. It was, the first time in the franchise's history that it had such a mode. But I would say it was an element of two factors at the time in the game industry. The first of these was the Online Pass, where new copies of games would include a pass to allow you to go online. Used copies, you had to spend $10 to do so. In addition, this was also the start of the rise of microtransactions to pay for different perks and added benefits in small little increments to then add up over time. I feel like this was the reason Mass Effect 3 had a multiplayer mode to kind of take advantage of these two things. But also, the mode worked its way into the galactic readiness of the single-player mode campaign. So, in the earlier days of launch in Mass Effect 3, you needed to put in a significant amount of time into the multiplayer to reach the game's very best endings. Like, not all endings were available if you didn't play the multiplayer quite a lot, which seems ridiculous, and to the point where, a few months later, when the extended cut DLC came out, this reduced the readiness level for all endings. So maybe not all players needed to reach those high heights. Not everyone needed to play the multiplayer. And after the first few months and all the attention, they got all their money there. There was also an iOS game that could have helped contribute to this galactic readiness, but I think the most important thing to note is that, yes, as I mentioned, in the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, the multiplayer will not be included, and therefore you will be able to get all the best endings without playing multiplayer.
I had no idea that was a thing. This is literally the first time hearing about that. Wow, that's stupid.
It is stupid. If you didn't play multiplayer at all, you could unlock the third of the three big branching path endings.
What?
But there is a slight difference in one of those endings that you needed maximum galactic readiness for. And that is what at the time, for the first 3 months, you needed a lot of multiplayer. It's silly.
That sounds awful. What? I mean, I'd say what were they thinking, but EA was thinking with dollar signs. That's what it was. That's what it was.
That's what it was at the time, for sure. Yes, absolutely. Now let's talk about that ending. To quote from Wikipedia, quote, "The ending of Mass Effect 3 was poorly received by fans, who felt that it did not meet expectations. Critics felt the ending rendered character choices inconsequential, a general lack of closure, lore contradictions and plot holes, character and narrative inconsistencies, the absence of a final boss battle, and inconsistencies between statements by BioWare staff during the game's development and the form the endings ultimately took." There was an effort to, quote, retake Mass Effect. They did a charity drive where they raised like $80,000 in 2 days. So you couldn't possibly argue that their arguments weren't without merit, because you'd be arguing against charity. A fan complained that BioWare did not deliver on the promise of its game to the Federal Trade Commission in the United States. The Better Business Bureau got involved and thought that, we side with the fans. It was false advertisement. And this is why we got an extended cut DLC. Look, I don't think that it was in fans' place to say, we want the ending that we have envisioned in our minds for so long that we are going to be entitled about it and demand that BioWare change their original creative vision. I think that when it comes to how the narrative is structured overall, and in most games and series and stories, honestly, you start small, you open and get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you close and end small. Now, I think even the fact that there were 3 choices at the end gives some amount of customization to it. But for people to say, well, for my game to only end on those 3 choices, no. You had an entire narrative of choices. That was your story. That was your Shepard. So I have never been one to be upset, frustrated at the ending. I think it's a bunch of entitled garbage, to be honest. I think certain fans even became whiny babies about it to the point to have to complain to higher powers about it. But I will say I do give a lot of kudos to fan theories, such as the indoctrination theory, which if you've played Mass Effect 3 and you are unfamiliar with the indoctrination theory, it is not canon, but it does make you think. It did make for a fun time with things like that floating about, but that's just fan theories in general.
I think I agree that I remember it being kind of overblown. Like going to the FTC, really? Come on. Like, it's a game. Shut up. But I do remember getting to the ending myself and sort of just being like, that was it? That was all? I personally exited that game sort of understanding why the backlash was what it was, but I also do agree that, like, we don't get to tell people how they end their stories. Like, that's not our place. I heavily disagree with that idea. Like, I, at first, did not like the ending of The Last of Us, even though now, looking back on it, I think it's fine. It's good. It makes sense. Everything works. But back then, I was like, that sucks. I didn't want this ending. It would be completely out of my purview to be like, now I'm going to petition Naughty Dog to change the ending because I didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there was some merit to the outrage, but the way that some gamers decided they were going to voice that outrage was outright stupid and childish. But I don't know. It's a very weird subject in gaming history, I feel like.
And I feel like it's extra frustrating, like that's the way this game is remembered. Not for the other moments in the game, not for how the gameplay, it did make improvements over Mass Effect 2. No, it's the ending. Everyone talks about the ending, and I don't know, maybe we'll get a different perspective on it when everyone gets to play the Legendary Edition very soon. So Mass Effect 3 was reviewed very well on consoles, with a Metacritic average of 93 on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, making it the highest rated game of 2012 on both platforms. The game got an 89 on PC and 85 on Wii U. It received acclaim for its art direction, characters, emotional story, improved combat, soundtrack, and voice acting. But yes, the game's conclusion was its greatest criticism, as well as some critics thinking that it relied too much on the previous titles. I don't know how to tell you this. It's the ending to a trilogy. You kind of do need to know a bit about what happens in the previous 2 games.
Yeah, that's a stupid criticism. That I'm never going to understand of like, why can't I go see Avengers without seeing the other movies? Why does it just pretend I'm supposed to know who these characters are? It's like, 'cause you are. That's why.
Yeah, for sure. And then at launch, there were also some squad mate and enemy AI bugs that were also present, so that knocked a little bit as well. Overall, there were 3.5 million copies of Mass Effect 3 shipped in the first month. Not really any details on how many total copies the game sold, especially with Trilogy and then the Wii U version and all the other versions since. Not really too much there. It won Best RPG from the Spike Video Game Awards and IGN. It also won Game of the Year from Game Informer. Mass Effect 3 was nominated for 3 BAFTAs, including Best Game, Story, and Action. At the Interactive Achievement Awards, what we now know as DICE, it was nominated for Outstanding Achievement in Original Music Composition, as well as Character for Jennifer Hale's female Commander Shepard, and it won Role-Playing Game of the Year. As far as its legacy, there was quite a bit of DLC, as we've already kind of mentioned. But at launch, there was a paid DLC pack called From Ashes for $10. It was pretty controversial because it added a pretty important crew member, and there were debates on, at the time, if it was cut content from the disc for money. Oh man, I do not miss those days of, it was, DLC that you cut from the disc so that you could launch it. Street Fighter Cross Tekken.
To be fair, the Street Fighter Cross Tekken one was stupid, and they knew it was stupid.
I know, but I don't miss those arguments these days.
Well, I would hope here's the thing. In case people don't know, back in the day, there used to be a lot of hubbub about on-disc DLC because a lot of people didn't understand why it existed and why companies were putting this data on the disc you own, but then making you pay to unlock it. And it's because most of the time it was not finished on the disc. It was something that they started working on while they were waiting for the game to get printed. Because they still have to do something. They still have to get paid. So they make something extra and they put it on the disc. And it's just the whole hubbub about it, though the Street Fighter Cross Tekken one is always going to be close to my heart for Capcom. When the localizer said, hey, people are going to see this. You know that, right? Like, people are going to data mine and find this. Their response was, why would anybody do that? That would be illegal. And just, it was a weird, dumb time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do not miss it. Then a few months later, there was that free DLC pack called Extended Cut and expanded upon the ending. It was kind of mixed. Some people liked what they fixed. Some people thought it just raised more questions. Then there was Leviathan, Omega, and Citadel as DLC packs that released throughout the first year. Don't worry, these will all be included in the Legendary Edition. Citadel especially is a great bit of fan service and a fun little side story. In the future, going into the next console generation, the Mass Effect franchise continued with Mass Effect Andromeda. It was a standalone sequel released in March 2017 for PS4, Xbox One, and PC. I feel like that's a game that probably got a little better over time, but boy, some of those algorithm animations did not look great at launch, and a bunch of whole memes there.
Oh boy, yeah.
In the meantime, go get that Legendary Edition if you want to play the Mass Effect trilogy. Again, May 14th on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. And then a future installment in the Mass Effect franchise is currently in development at BioWare. When we talk about the music in Mass Effect 3 and the composers to possibly discuss and who can we bring to the show, let's talk about Clint Mansell. Clinton Darrell Mansell was born on January 7th, 1963 in Coventry, Warwickshire, England. His website had quite the interesting little timeline on his About section, so I'll kind of read it off for you here. 1972, saw David Bowie perform Starman on Top of the Pops. 1972, bought my first album, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust. 1975, school. 1977, heard Ramones' Sheena is a Punk Rocker. 1978, saw Ramones, Blondie, The Clash. 1981, left school, formed band. This band would be called Pop Will Eat Itself. 1982, played first gig. 1986, recorded first single 5 tracks, 7 minutes for 55 pounds, including lunch. 1987, made first album. 1996, met Darren Aronofsky. 1997, scored first film, Pie. And the rest, as they say, ... So, the band that Clint Mansell formed, Pop Will Eat Itself, they were seen as pioneers of sampling and electronic music in the UK alternative rock scene, bringing influences from hip-hop, industrial music, house, and other dance genres into their music. In the United States, Pop Will Eat Itself were signed in 1994 to Nothing Records, the label owned by Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails. So Mansell and Reznor became friends because Reznor was a longtime fan of Pop Will Eat Itself. So Mansell ended up moving to New York, spent some time with Reznor, and Mansell subsequently performed backing vocals on Nine Inch Nails' 1999 album, The Fragile. But yes, he mentioned how he met film director Darren Aronofsky, and so now Mansell is like the go-to composer for Darren Aronofsky. Quote, "When I first met Darren, one of the first things we agreed about was the fact that we didn't like film music because it was rubbish and wallpaper and just sits there a lot of the time." So you may know Clint Mansell's film score work best with Requiem for a Dream, specifically the leitmotif and main theme track, Lux Aeterna. And honestly, if you know that name, great, but you probably know the melody more. This famous track would end up getting remixed as Requiem for a Tower and was used in a trailer for The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. This remix version would be used in a bunch of movie trailers since then. It's the da-da, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Like it's, oh my god, it's a classic film score piece. But unfortunately, Clint Mansell's been going through some tragedy and working through some grief in his life. In 2020, he released an album cover of Lou Reed's album, Berlin. And this is his way of processing grief as a tribute to his girlfriend, Heather, who passed away in 2014. He chose to do a track-for-track cover of this album because it was a live performance of Lou Reed's Berlin, that it was the last thing that they had watched together. And so in a collaboration with musician and producer Clint Walsh, produced this album, and you can find it on Clint Mansell's website at iamclintmansell.com. That's Mansell. He says, quote, "I believe very much in inspiration. I don't believe that I can just do any film. I can put music on any film, but that doesn't make it good. So I look for the films that warrant the sort of work I want to do. I want to be involved with something that means something." So yeah, it's talking about how film music means a lot when you're involved in the process. It's not just taking a gig. There's a lot of investment and time and thought and research that goes into these kind of projects. You can find him on Twitter at IamClintMansell. On Instagram, he is at I was a teenage Clint Mansell with underscores on between each of those as spaces. So as far as Clint Mansell's discography, Mass Effect 3 seems to be the only game that he's worked on, which is really interesting. But as far as films go, some of the notable titles include Pi, Requiem for a Dream, Murder by Numbers, Sahara, Doom, The Fountain, Smoke and Aces, Definitely Maybe, The Wrestler, Black Swan, Noah, a little bit of Ghost in the Shell, working with Lorne Balfe, and the Netflix film Rebecca. For TV, he's recently worked on Titans and Doom Patrol for the DCEU, and also did a composition on an episode of CSI Miami and Black Mirror. Of course, there are also 5 studio albums from Pop Will Eat Itself. When it comes to Mass Effect 3's historical development research on its soundtrack, Jack Wall, who was the primary composer for games 1 and 2, did not return for Mass Effect 3. Instead, composers included Sam Hulick, Sasha Dikisian, Christopher Lennertz, Chris Velasco, and Clint Mansell. Hulick returned from working on the first 2 games, while Dikisian, Lennertz, and Velasco contributed to Mass Effect 2's DLC packs. Mansell likened his role to that of a disc jockey, who is responsible for choosing the right music at the right times. So each composer overall was kind of given a specific area of the game to work on, and the main goal was to blend Mass Effect 2's orchestral sound with Mass Effect's synth-driven work. And I think they did a really good job with that. So when we talk about the 5 critical tracks for Mass Effect 3, we have to start with, I think, the big one. This is Leaving Earth. Oh my gosh, one that tugs right at the heartstrings immediately. So I would say out of all the pieces on Mass Effect 3's soundtrack, this is the one that stands out the most. And it's interesting because this is the one that is composed by Clint Mansell. Granted, he also shows up for composition work in the game's ending sequence. There's a track called An End Once and For All that he co-composes with Sam Hulick. That's like taking this piano motif and kind of making it a little more somber. But where Leaving Earth plays is at the end of the intro tutorial mission, as Shepard, leaves Earth. And so it establishes this piano leitmotif that'll be used throughout the game. Of course, those incredible blaring horns of the Reaper threat. And then you hear a little bit at the end of the clip there, the counter melody that comes in with the string. Just gorgeous. You know, it's a powerful moment, especially when it syncs up with the action. When those horns come in, like it's showing like a Reaper is like, looked at this group of people and is about to open fire. And amazing. Like even when at the end of the piece, it goes and hits the title splash. Just so. It's fantastic. I even have heard this piece used sometimes. I was sitting in a movie theater with my brother and we were watching, it was like a preview for the Peaky Blinders series that came out several years ago. And we're like, this is Leaving Earth from Mass Effect 3. What is it doing in this preview? So I don't know. I always think of this piece when it comes to this game. It's a powerful one. It had to be here.
I have vague memories of this song, actually. It sounds very, very familiar. And even without the familiarity, yeah, this is a damn good piece. Just on its own merits, even aside from being from Mass Effect. Like, damn. Well done.
It is simple, it is powerful in its execution, and based on Clint Mansell's other work, I mean, that's it right there. That's why he was brought on to this team. But let's get to number 2 on their Critical 5. A little more emblematic of what Mass Effect 3's soundtrack is like. This is Mars. So yes, Mars is the first big priority mission in the game where you're discovering there's a Prothean artifact in the archives on Mars, and it has this data, which are the blueprints for the Crucible weapon that will be essential to taking down the Reapers. Now there are multiple parts in this piece overall because it kind of represents the breadth of what you're doing on the whole mission. But the clip in particular, it represents conflict with Cerberus at the end. So you're in battle with these soldiers at the end. And I think it's just the perfect, amazing representation of when you're talking about the blend between the orchestration that 2 brought to its soundtrack versus the synths of Mass Effect, the original. It's just a perfect blending here. You're kind of getting the runs of synths in the background, but the powerful melodies of the orchestration. It's a cool climactic fight theme.
I didn't think about the fact that, it's a combination of how the last 2 games do their soundtracks. Though, also, at the very end of the clip, is that a reference to Uncharted Worlds?
I mean, a little bit. It is Sam Hulick who composed Uncharted Worlds. I mean, I feel like to him, like that's the sound of Mass Effect, right? So maybe to get back in the action of a main mission into Mass Effect 3, maybe that's a little bit there, but I mean, it's a cool little take on, bringing these synths in, and it's just a good mission to start the game off with overall.
Absolutely.
Number 3 on the critical tracks, we're kind of jumping more towards the end of the game. This is I Was Lost Without You. Also composed by Sam Hulick. This is the romance theme in Mass Effect 3. So when you spend the night with someone special before that big final showdown, it's a piece that starts really quietly, simple piano, but the clip here shows this gorgeous orchestral swell where the melody really takes over, and I think of it often when I'm like, oh, what are the main pieces in Mass Effect 3? Oh, da 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 da. But though more often than not, I'm actually thinking of Talizora singing it in the Citadel DLC, adding lyrics to it because it's like apparently from some Korean song. So maybe I'm more often not thinking of the lyrics, but that big melody swell it's a big musical moment for sure.
You know, I never played the Citadel DLC. I've heard that it's like the best part of the game, just bar none.
Everyone gets drunk at a party and it's great.
It sounds fantastic, but I don't think I ever played it. Huh, now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, this song, the theme of Tally, the correct choice. Very good. I like it. It's a very gorgeous, gorgeous piece. I agree.
But then we're getting a little more dramatic and tense with number 4 on their critical 5. This is the big moment. The fleets arrive. Also composed by Sam Hulick. What can I say? He just knows Mass Effect music so well. So this is the moment where you're assembling the troops before the final battle. The ships are coming in. It may seem like all hope is lost, but here they come. They're warping in. It's almost like the Avengers Endgame portal moment before the portals moment, if you will. But it's a great moment for the series. It's, the payoff of all of your decisions, all of your hard work, getting all of these alien races to unite together. And musically, I mean, you get these march-like drums really setting that militaristic tone, definitely supported by the pacing of the strings, but all with this heroic brass melody coming through. It's a big, heartwarming moment. Like, yeah, I did this as Shepard.
I think the comparison to the portal moment is fitting. I think it's fitting. It's not as grand scale, obviously.
No, yeah.
What is? Because that is another moment where it's like, oh man, everything you did builds up to this moment. You got these people to help. It's going to be this huge, massive deal. And I think this song really, really fits that. It kind of reminds me of, not 100%, but like, I hate this movie, but in Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, when Elizabeth gets up on the ropes and starts giving this speech because they're pirates, they gotta fight. That's what I think of more specifically, which is also a moment very much like that, I suppose. I don't know. That's the vibe I get.
I think that's a good comparison. And yeah, just the big march just really sets that tone. Like it's time to take on the Reapers.
I wish I could compare it to a movie that's not bad.
Yeah, it wasn't the best, was it? Well, when we wrap up the Critical 5, so too do we wrap up the Mass Effect trilogy with the end credits theme. This is Das Malefiz. This is composed and performed by Fonts. And fonts, you may remember, did the M4 Part 2 theme that was used as the end credits in the original Mass Effect. No vocals in this piece, though, like there was in M4 Part 2. But it is really cool to get fonts back to do the end credits theme after they were absent in Mass Effect 2. And I don't know, I just really love this kind of music. I think it's super easy to vibe to, especially when we haven't really heard electric guitar all game, especially this kind of clean picked guitar with a full sound behind it of a band. It's just a great capper, if you will. A lot of, somber leitmotif piano from Leaving Earth, but, kind of repurposed as an end once and for all for kind of showing the repercussions of Shepard's decision, but then it shows this and kind of builds to it. And then the extended cut, they put like a scene with Admiral Hackett talking some more about the repercussions, so it kind of breaks the musical build-up and cut to the credits. So again, the creative vision disrupted by fan complaining, but the song itself is great, and I love its use in the end credits.
I think this might be my favorite song of the Critical 5. You mentioned that it's a good song and an easy one to vibe to, and I 100% agree with that. I also the groove in this song is strong. It's really, really, and I don't usually think the groove of this song is fun when thinking about Mass Effect music, but here we are.
Yeah, but I think that's the power of fonts. That's the power of using them in the end credits. And, it's not Mass Effect per se, but it's a good use there for sure. Though I'll take M4 Part 2 any day if that's just me. Couple tracks from me on the cutting room floor. One of these is the track called A Cerberus Agent. Once again, you guessed it, is composed by Sam Hulick. It is the scene where you have to chase Dr. Eva. Dr. Eva Corey. This is the end of the Mars mission. So, yeah, she's taken the Prothean data. Don't let her get away with it. There are stakes. You just had this confrontation with the Elusive Man, and now it's this intense action chase scene. But man, it's intense. Love the intensity of the percussion, and then it's those synths going at it. So it leans a little more into like Mass Effect 1 action, but oh man, the percussion there is fantastic.
I have zero memory of this moment. I don't know who Dr. Eva Cora is, so there's a good song. I don't remember this. I don't remember this moment. God, I don't remember a lot of this game.
You need to play this game again because she becomes one of your party members, in a way. We'll leave it at that, in case you haven't played Mass Effect 3 before. Let's get to my second track on the cutting room floor. This is I'm Sorry. This one is composed by not Sam Hulick. It's actually composed by Chris Velasco and Sasha Dikisian. Oh man, if you heard this piece in the game, you messed up. You done messed up big time. This is the big confrontation on Rannoch. If you chose to side with the Geth instead of the Quarians. We'll leave it at that. It's still an incredible piece. So not one I heard in the game per se, but just a huge orchestra moment. Great orchestration overall, and these powerful blaring horns that cuts in, and you did a bad thing. I hope you don't ever have to hear it, but man, it's a piece that stands out on the soundtrack for sure.
I think I remember this moment at least. But I don't remember what decision I made. Probably the one that helped the Quarians because, my wife is a Quarian, so it's just, I had a connection.
I would hope you did not experience this moment. You may be traumatized, honestly. So what will I never forget about the game? I think it's the end of gaming's best narrative trilogy. It's a fantastic conclusion, I think, as a game overall. Could you nitpick the end? Sure. But I hate that the discourse is kind of just stuck to, yeah, but what about that ending, though? To the point where, yeah, Joe, you played this game not even at launch, and you've forgotten so much of it. I think you need to play Mass Effect Legendary Edition out this Friday.
Resident Evil came out last week. I gotta play that. I need the tall lady to stomp on me. I have priorities.
And then you get your Tally lady to stomp on you, as from tall to Tally.
Tally would never stomp on me. She'd never do that. Don't know what the hell's going on.
Well, in the meantime, before we transition to our next game, let's talk about a fan cover or a remix, whether it's on OC Remix, YouTube, wherever. I had to pick Leaving Earth, right? It's the song. It's Clint Mansell, who we covered for a composer. What kind of covers could I find? How about a metal cover of Leaving Earth? It sounds really good. This is by Seb Doom on YouTube, SEBDOOM. Please enjoy. It's such a great guitar heavy sound. We'll be right back.
Alrighty, what's that? You want to completely change tones and art style and scope and everything? Well then, let's talk about Pikuniku. Pikuniku was originally released on January 25th, 2019 for PC and Nintendo Switch. An Xbox One release would follow on March 12th, 2020. Funnily enough, never seems to have come out on PS4. That's a bit odd, but hey. And in case you're listening and you're like the one person who cares, it's also available on Google Stadia as of February 9th, 2021, where you can play all the hits and not own them even though you paid full price for them.
Actually, I think it was last month, if you are somehow still a Stadia Pro member, Pikuniku was available as a free part of your Pro membership. So you could have this in your Stadia library and not even know it.
And by have it, I mean Google has it and you can use it, sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't a game that there are parts of this game I think input lag would destroy, but overall, Pikuniku was developed by Sector Dub, which is apparently a British-French sort of collaboration group, from what I could tell. A lot of the head developers on this were French, but then there's also a good amount of English people in there as well. And it was published by Devolver Digital, because Devolver just has an eye for the good stuff. So Pikuniku is a puzzle adventure game where the player takes control of a red oval with two stretchy legs, and his name is Piku, or their name is Piku. I don't know which. I'm just going to use they. They have the ability to jump, kick, and retract their legs to become a rolling oval creature. And these are the only abilities Piku needs. But, in case you're not satisfied with those abilities, if you're asking too much of Piku, you can also find hats throughout the world that give you small little abilities that you can use, such as a watering hat that's like a hose that can water flowers that turn into platforms, or a pair of sunglasses that make you look really swag. It's a thing. So, the story of Pikuniku is as follows. One day, Piku wakes up in a cave, and once they leave said cave, they learn that the local villagers have been telling tales of the beast that lives in that cave. Basically, he's been asleep for so long that people think Piku's a monster that lives in this cave. And it doesn't really help things when Piku accidentally destroys their bridge across the river, and so the villagers put him in a cage and refuse to release them until they agree to fix the bridge. And after fixing the bridge, Piku is given free rein to explore the world, where they quickly encounter the flying robot fleet of one Mr. Sunshine. Mr. Sunshine is a pink creature very similar to Piku, and he has taken on a business of offering to take the villagers' junk, which, in this case, turns out to actually mean valuable resources that these people need, such as all of their food and water, and throw free money as a way to make everybody happy, even though he's taking all this stuff. He just makes it rain all these gold coins that the game jokes a lot of the time of like, there's not really that much to use these on. And thus, Piku gets drawn into a plot to stop Mr. Sunshine from stealing all the corn and also a bunch of other stuff, using his amazing powers of being able to kick really good. That's the plot of Pikuniku. This game is bizarre, it's weird, and here is where I'm going to ask you, Peter, what are your experiences with Pikuniku?
I think I have it in a couple places. What are you talking about? Of course I don't have a Stadia Pro account. I think I also got it through one of the charity collections for PC, so I think I've got it there as well. Haven't played it though. Don't know a thing about it except you keep mentioning capitalism, and yeah, now that makes sense. It is a fight against capitalism.
It is a very short game. It can be beaten in about 2.5 to 3 hours. It is one of the first games that wasn't related to Smash for Pieces that I solo streamed on the NWR Twitch, and that stream is actually still on the channel and also is on YouTube, where I just had a great time. And multiple times during the stream, people popped into the chat to be like, hey, I left for like 10 minutes. Why is this a completely different game all of a sudden? I think it is genuinely one of the funnier games I've ever played, ever. And it really likes to lean into like, the game is super goofy, even though it has, underlying themes of, hey, it kind of sucks if somebody's taking the things you need to live and then just giving you money for it, and you honestly can't stop them. That kind of sucks, huh? So it is a lot of fun. It is very goofy. It's got a lot of physics puzzles. Most puzzles can be solved by kicking stuff. That is not a joke. That is the core mechanic of the gameplay. And in order to sort of get myself reacquainted with Pikuniku, I actually had my roommate start it last night, and he made it a good deal through before we had to, unfortunately, end for the night. I highly recommend Pikuniku. It's absolutely hilarious. It's a fun time, and it's a short play. But anyways, let's talk about the very, very, very little I could find about how this game was made, because there's basically no information about it at all. So I did find out from a couple of interviews, the name Pikuniku comes from the Japanese pronunciation of the word picnic, with the idea being that, quote, a picnic is something everyone enjoys, a moment to share with friends and family. In game, this is more accurately represented by the fact that your character is named Piku, and in the little side co-op missions, the other one is named Niku. Basically, is how that comes together. And you'll be surprised to hear, and by surprised, I mean not surprised at all, to hear that the tone of Pikuniku was heavily influenced by the work of Keita Takahashi, aka the man behind Katamari Damacy, which, that checks out.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
So when asked about the genre, I find this absolutely hilarious. The designer Ahmad Debak replied, "It's a platformer because there are platforms. It's an adventure game because there is text. But I think what it really is Pikuniku." I can respect that answer.
It's a good answer.
I love it. It was received mostly positively upon release. It currently sits at a 76 on Metacritic, so it's not the best game in the world, but it's does pretty good. One reviewer at Kotaku, though, that I was able to find apparently described the game as an experience not unlike if you took a mild hallucinogenic and then watched a foreign language children's TV show.
Wow.
And that kind of checks out a little bit. It was only nominated for one award in 2019, being the Best International Indie Game at the Pegasus Awards 2020. I'm not familiar with those, so add that to the list. Every few weeks, we discover another award show that we just didn't know about. But that's all I can find about the development of Pikuniku. Let's get into the man behind its delightfully quirky and weird soundtrack. His name is Calum Bowen. According to Wikipedia, he was born in either 1990 or 1991, and we don't know for sure. He is currently stationed in London. That's where he lives and works out of. But he regularly goes by his stage name, Bo-N. That's B-O space E-N. And he released one studio album titled Pale Machine in 2013. And as far as I can tell, he is working on another studio album right now. He is good friends and a collaborator with the group Quero Quero Bonito, whom we have talked about very briefly on the Best of 2020 episode, because they did the main theme of Bugsnax last year. And in 2014, he did a remix of their song My Party, and this remix was featured on their EP Bonito Recycling, which is a fantastic name for an album. Though, fun fact that I actually did not know before I started doing research for this show. So if you are even slightly in the podcasting business or game journalism, you probably know who the McElroys are. They're big names in podcasting, and two of them were two of the co-founders of Polygon. So all three of the brothers do a show with their wives. And Griffin McElroy specifically does a show with his wife named Rachel McElroy, where it's called Wonderful, and basically literally all they do is they talk about things they like. They go research a thing they like, and they talk about it. Fun fact, for years I have been listening to Wonderful, and hearing that the intro and outro song of that podcast is a song called Money Won't Pay by Bowen and Augustus. And wouldn't you know it? Same Bowen. So I've been hearing one of his songs for years before I even knew who he was. So that's kind of a cool little thing to draw a line from. I found a quote from him in an interview where he says, quote, "A big part of my music is an attempt to rid people of the perception that style/genre should be the basis for value judgments. So, in using different timbres and rhythms, which are mostly the varying factors that define specific genres, as freely as possible, I want to encourage people to free themselves from placing value judgments on genres alone. Basically, you shouldn't be the type of person that says, I like all genres except rap and country, because you probably just haven't heard the right music from that genre." I don't know. That's what I took from that quote, at the very least. And you can follow him on Twitter at Calum Bowen. That's CALUMBOWEN, all one word. In terms of discography, he has done a lot of games. Some of these I'm familiar with, some of them not really. His first game on his discography is Winose, which I've never heard of, WINNOSE, but I have heard of Lovely Planet, which is apparently a super hard FPS game that I believe I own because somebody gave it to me. He also did the music for the arcade version of Lovely Planet. He did the music for a game called Pack of Pets. And then something that actually hit me from left field, I didn't expect this. He's the composer behind Snipper Clips.
Oh, okay.
The Nintendo published puzzle game about snipping things off their friends. So hey, there you go.
A pretty similar style to Pikuniku, honestly.
Perfect. He also did the music for Lonely Planet 2, April Skies, as well as the RPG Omori, which came out earlier this year. Same with a game called Voyage, which also came out earlier this year. So he's pretty well into the games industry now, and I look forward to seeing where he goes from here. In terms of historical development research, I want to give a shout out to WSHU Public Radio. Specifically, I want to give a shout out to Kate Remington and her podcast Music Respawn, which I was not aware of before now, but I think I'm probably going to throw her a subscribe and check out more episodes. But she did a full interview with Calum Bowen specifically about his work on Pikuniku, which is where I didn't find a lot of info that I could use specifically for this show, but that's where I did find the stuff. And I want to give her a shout out. You can actually follow her at Respawn Show on Twitter, and you should absolutely do so. So, Bowen ended up being referred to the Pikuniku team by folks in Caro Caro Bonito, because the original plan was to have the producer for that group be the composer for the game. But then some scheduling conflicts happened. Bowen mentions he doesn't know if it was like they were busy touring or busy with work trying to get an album put together or anything like that. But he couldn't do it. He could not do the job. So he suggested Bowen instead. And they went to him and they showed him some of the artwork and they explained the concept of the game and all that. And he knew immediately that it was a perfect fit for his style of music. And he says he wanted the music to have sort of a layered approach to the soundtrack, with a whimsical outer layer that hides a few more sinister undertones underneath it, which I don't know if I get that vibe specifically, but maybe I'm just not listening hard enough. I don't know. Anyways, maybe you'll hear it though, because we're going to jump into the 5 critical tracks. Like, wow, this has been probably the shortest segment I've ever done. We're going to start with critical track number 1. It's Welcome. So this is the song that plays on the title screen. And it's weird and very minimalist, because Pikuniku has a very minimalist art style, so I think that fits really well. And it's just got this nice feeling to it. I really, really dig this song, and I think it's super indicative of the tone of Pikuniku as a whole. It's weird, it's minimalist, it's kind of fun.
Some of the instruments almost sound like you could put this on a Game Boy Advance sound chip and get away with it. It's kind of neat in that way. I also like the jazzy noodling on electric piano. That's pretty neat near the end of the clip.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. He went real into this song that likely you probably won't hear for more than 2 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
Since it's on the title screen, I don't know. But my personal favorite song in the game is actually critical track number 2, and that is The Mountain Village. We've actually played this song on the show before, because Pikuniku was an honorable mention on the Best of 2019 episode, and this was the song that I had selected as the song that represented it for its honorable mention status. This is the first major area in the game, the Mountain Village, as you might have guessed, and I absolutely adore this melody, and it's a good thing that I adore this melody because, wow, it's everywhere on this soundtrack. It is everywhere. It's just really catchy and really quirky, and I think it does a really good job of nailing the tone of the goofy adventure that you are currently on.
Yeah, I remember this being included in Best of 2019, and so I'm like, all right, where's the bwamp, 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 bwamp? Like, there it is. That's the song. Yeah, no, good to hear this one, and yeah, it sounds like it's used a lot. It's definitely catchy. Repetitive, but catchy in a good way.
Yeah, I love it. But I also love critical track number 3, because that is King of the Dance Floor. So at one point in the second town of the game, the Forest Village, Piku has to prove that they can be part of the resistance, that they're cool, that they can do it. So they have to get into a club, and then the people in the resistance are like, you see that robot on the dance floor? He considers himself the king of the dance floor. You got to show that you can do this, that you're with us. You got to go beat him. And then it starts a rhythm minigame. And this is the song that plays during that rhythm minigame. It's another one of those like super goofy moments of like, oh, I guess we're doing this now. And it's always been a very, very memorable part to me. I absolutely adore this song and this part of the game. And it's just, it's fun. All hail the king of the dance floor.
I feel like this is my favorite song of the ones you've presented. And now hearing that story of where it takes place in game, yeah, I think it would be my favorite moment in the game too.
It's so good. Following that, we have critical track number 4. It is Take On Mr. Sunshine. So eventually you head to Mr. Sunshine's base of operations. That is, of course, in a volcano, because why would it not be? That's not a spoiler. That's one of the first things you learn, that he has a base in the volcano. And this is the song during the final encounter with Mr. Sunshine, as you're chasing him and he's throwing stuff at you and you're gonna beat him. And it's just a really funny, dumb sequence, and I adore it. And somehow this song is like super tense, while also like it keeps that whimsy sort of intact, which I think is super impressive. But a lot of YouTube comments compare the sound font specifically in this song to something that sounds like Kirby, and I think I can hear that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the little kind of trumpet-like instruments. I think of like the drum pacing as almost like not necessarily a classic Final Fantasy, but like some sort of like random battle on Super Nintendo.
Oh, maybe. I could sort of hear that too, yeah. It's got that sort of pace to it.
Mm-hmm. It's intense. You can definitely get the sense that, yeah, it's a big chase. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a great moment, a lot of fun, and then we're going to bring the tone down just a little bit and, relax a little bit with critical track number 5. Everything's going to be okay. This music plays as the credits are rolling. Piku has returned to their cave, and they're going back to sleep because it's been a long day. And I love how it's just this delightfully sort of subdued piece, and it's just really nice and calming, and it definitely feels like the end of a hard day's work. I don't know, it's got a homeliness to it that I really appreciate in this song.
Yeah, simple little instruments, and it's just like, yeah, it's sleepy time. Time to call it a day. Yeah, you're right. It wasn't the tone I was necessarily expecting for a credits theme, but if that's what you're doing, that works. That makes sense.
Yeah, you gotta go take a nap. In terms of songs on the cutting room floor, I have two. The first one is the return of that Mountain Village melody. Guys, I tried to avoid putting it in the Critical 5 more than once, which was not easy, let me tell you. But my first cutting room floor track is The Shop. This song sounds like elevator music, but also it has dog barks in the background.
Yeah, it does.
So how can I not put this on the thing? How can I not mention this song?
Pretty cool EQ to make it sound like the elevator music, though. Like I appreciate that.
Yeah, I do dig it. I think it's the electric piano that makes it sound like that. Just it's great. And my second song on the cutting room floor is Run! So I think the title of this song says it all. This is the part where you're supposed to run. I actually watched Ben do this last night. You kick the robot that's sucking up all the corn, and it's like, oh, I guess it's time for that person to die. And you have to run away from it so you can lead it into a trap. It's a lot of fun. It's a stupid, quirky moment, and I really, really like that song a lot.
I don't know, maybe it is the same sort of gameplay, but you also get the sense of Kirby vibes with this one too.
I would not be surprised to find out that Kirby was another influence on this game in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, it's real fun though. I like it a lot.
So, what will I never forget about Pikuniku? I think it's one of the funnier games I've ever played. It's laugh out loud funny. It was the perfect choice to be my first non-Smash Pieces stream in years. I had a really good time with it. I've been looking for an excuse to bring it to this show for about a year now, and it finally appeared in my attempt to just be the most tonally dissonant game in comparison to Mass Effect that I can find, and to be honest, I think this one might take the cake.
Yeah, it's pretty drastic, that's for sure. And I'm glad you got to bring it to the show, especially after we highlighted it on Best of 2019. Did it help that a vacancy helped pave the way for it? Sure. But, it's pretty great to include it here because when it comes down to it, it's about these big confrontations with immovable objects and insurmountable forces. I mean, Reapers, capitalism, it's all the same thing, right? Right?
I mean, what are Reapers but a metaphor for capitalists?
Maybe next time I play Mass Effect 3 or just Mass Effect in general, I'll think about that. But that will do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Joe is over at StringPixel. Switched up your Twitter account, so go follow Joe there at StringPixel. The video version of the podcast is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but it's that MP3 podcast version that you want, and it's hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. It's where Joe's other podcast, Smash Your Pieces, is hosted, and you can find Smash Your Pieces and Original Soundchat on podcast services all around the globe. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, even on Spotify, where we have the podcast feed with episodes, but also a big Spotify playlist. We cover a video game song on this show, and it's on Spotify. It's getting added to that playlist. Joe, what's being added this week?
Both of them, baby. Mass Effect 3 has been on Spotify for longer than I've been on Spotify, I think. And then Pikuniku is also there. It's where I first got to listen to the soundtrack outside of the game.
Excellent. Good to have both soundtracks added this week. When you're done listening, you can find us on social media at Soundchat OST. Leave some feedback for us. How are we doing with these episodes? And also suggestions for games to cover in the future, because that's one of our big goals for 2021 content. We'll get our merch store up soon, I hope. And I know we have to make more bonus tracks as well. But if you have ideas for bonus tracks that you'd like to see, throw some suggestions our way on social media. Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I'm so excited for next week. I will be talking about Justin Luchter.
It should be a really interesting one, that's for sure. I tried to pair it, and I'll be talking about Jeff Clement. It'll be a really good episode, I think. A bit of an odd one, but a good one nonetheless. All right, Joe, let's play us out.
I don't know how I stumbled across this one, I'll be real. I mean, obviously, I just searched YouTube for, Pikuniku remix, but this is not what I expected to find. It is from the artist MCFC, that is their YouTube channel. It is an electro dubstep remix of The Mountain Village, which is not the song that I would have expected to have an electro dubstep remix, but here we are.
It slaps! What can I say? Well, that will do it for us this week on Original Sound Chat. We'll see you next time. Take care.